Let's turn to the book of Joshua, chapter 3. I'm just going to read a few scriptures and then speak about them. Okay. So, this is a familiar story, right? I think it's one that we learned in Sunday school, and it's about the Israelites crossing over into the Promised Land. So, let's look at Joshua chapter 3 and verses 3. It says, "When you seek the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God and the Levitical priests carrying it, you are to move from your positions and follow it. Then you will know which way to go, since you have never been this way before. But keep a distance about 2,000 cubits between you and the ark. Do not go near it." Verse 5. Joshua told the people, "Consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do amazing things among you." Verse 6. Joshua said to the priests, "Take up the ark of the covenant and pass on ahead of the people." Verse 7. It says, "And the Lord said to Joshua, 'Today I will begin to exalt you in the eyes of all Israel, so you may know that I am with you as I was with Moses. Tell the priests who carry the ark of the covenant, when you reach the edge of Jordan's waters, go and stand in the river." Verses 9. Joshua said to the Israelites, "Come here and listen to the words of the Lord your God. This is how you will know that the living God is among you, and he will certainly drive you out before the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Hivites, the Perizzites, Girgashites, Amorites, Jebusites, Chilibites, and mosquito bites." Okay. Verse 15. "Now the Jordan River is at flood stage all during the harvest. Yet as soon as the priest who carried the ark reached the Jordan and their feet touched the water's edge, the water from upstream stopped flowing." Verse 17. "The priests who carried the ark of the covenant of the Lord stopped in the middle of the Jordan and stood on high ground, while all Israel passed by until the whole nation had completed the crossing on dry ground." So I think the verses that I've read tell us pretty simply the story that is happening, the crossing over of the children of Israel into the Promised Land. So in verse 3, right, which we started off, it said, "When you see the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God and the priest carrying it, you are to move out of your positions and follow it." So what do you need to do? You need to see. You need to see the ark. And what did the ark represent? I must tell you, when I was growing up, I learned of the Ark of the Covenant not from the Bible or Sunday school. I learned it from Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Anybody saw that movie here? Yeah, so that's where I learned about the Ark of the Covenant. But the Ark of the Covenant was about the presence of the Lord, right? We need to be aware and we need to be looking for the presence of the Lord if we need to move out. You need to move out of your comfort positions. In order for us to get into the promise, we need to get there through the presence. Right? Verse 4 says, "Then you will know which way to go, since you have never been this way before." Right? All of us, who use Google or use Apple Maps know what it is to get lost. Right? You know that it's not reliable and you can't trust it and you're going to get lost because you're going to go to a place you've never been before. Which way do you go when you don't know where you're going? You see, sometimes you get people who are busy in life, but they're going nowhere. Motion doesn't equal progress. I think I spoke about this the last time. Sometimes you can be still and not moving, but the direction that you are facing in is important. Moses was in the desert for 40 years. People who said he never moved anywhere, but he was in the right direction. He was just waiting for speed to move him forward, right? So which way you go is important in terms of the direction. We need to look to God. This verse tells us, look to God to direct us into the unknown. I grew up watching Star Trek. And one of the things that they said, you need to boldly go where no man has gone before. Another interesting thing in verse 4, it says, you need to keep a distance from the ark of the presence, right? God's presence is holy. We need to respect it, right? There's a famous song, Don't Stand Too Close to Me, by the Police, and I think of that song now. We need to reverence the presence of God. Quickly moving on to verse 5, it says that Joshua told the people, consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do amazing things among you. You know, before the Lord does great things in our lives, we need to come to a place of consecration. You know, for our past sins, our unforgiveness, our offenses. I knew of one auntie, she got offended because she asked a relative to bring pudina pickle. And then when the relative brought it, he said, here's your mince and nuts chutney. It's basically the same thing, but she got offended. Right? So before we move into our promised land, we need to consecrate ourselves, we need to purify ourselves. That's when God can move in us, for us, and through us. Right? We cannot step into the promises of tomorrow with the problems of today and yesterday. Verse 6 quickly says that the presence has to go before the people, right? Verse 7. In verse 7, the Lord says to Joshua, I'm going to exalt you in the eyes of Israel. God is the one who exalts us. We need to be humble and we need to be careful who we tell that. In the Bible, there are types and there are shadows. We know that Joshua is one of those types and shadows of Jesus Christ, right? What did he do when this word of exaltation came to him? He didn't tell the people, God told me that he's going to exalt me. He said, come here and listen to the words of the Lord your God. This is how you will know that the living God is among you. And it will certainly drive out the people that you're fearing. Joseph was also given a message of being exalted, but he wasn't humble, he was young. He told it to his brothers, he told it to the wrong people. Sometimes we need to be discerning and we need to be humble and, and protect that word that God has given us. We need to be like a sheepdog. A sheepdog, when it's looking out, it sees sheep and sometimes goats. It may see a sheep, but it says, I smell a wolf. And we need to be discerning in that sense to understand, because sometimes there are wolves among us. We need to be careful who we tell what God has laid into our hearts. Verse 15 speaks about the children of Israel crossing through the Jordan. When the Lord brought the children of Israel through the Jordan, at that point in time, the river was flooding. So there are times when the Jordan is quite shallow and you can probably just walk through it easily, but at this point in time, it was flooding and it was difficult to get through. Why did he do that? Right? He could have brought them to when it was shallow. He brought them through to show that it's not about them crossing over, but it's about his glory. In conclusion, I'd just like to ask a few questions, right? Why did Joshua's generation go into the promised land but not Moses? It was because of obedience, right? Because Joshua's generation were obedient. They were different. You see, Joshua had a pioneer mentality. Whereas the people that Moses had, they had a settler mentality. The difference between both those things is the pioneer mentality says, listen, I need to go out, I need to explore the unknown. God is going to take me there. Settler says, listen, I'm looking to yesterday. I'm working with what I got now and what I had yesterday. So that was the mentality. They had a slave mentality. Their eyes were behind them, not before them, right? And how did God work with his presence? In Moses' time, the presence of God was through a cloud and a pillar. Right? We know that the cloud and the pillar went with the children of Israel. But we see in the verse and text that we just read that the presence of the Lord now is signified by the Ark of the Covenant. But the goal was always the same. What was the goal? When Moses left, the goal was to get to the promised land. The presence was signaled by the cloud and the pillar. When Joshua comes into the scene, the goal is still to get to the promised land, but now God's presence is shown through the Ark of the Covenant. And what that tells us, we need to be stubborn in our goals, but we need to be flexible in our approach. The methods may change, but the goal will remain, right? And yeah, I think I'll stop there. Thank you.